The research station's alarms blared through every corridor. Red emergency lights flashed as scientists and staff ran for the escape pods. Through the station's massive observation window, the dark shapes of Empire warships blocked out the stars. Queen Ash stood on the bridge of her flagship, her tall frame wrapped in gleaming black armor. Her silver eyes narrowed as she watched the human station through the viewscreen. These humans had spread too far into Empire space. It was time they learned their place. "My queen, we have breached their defenses," reported her commander. "Excellent." Her voice was cold and clear. "I will lead the boarding party myself." Her warriors exchanged worried glances. It was unusual for their queen to personally join a raid, but none dared question her. Queen Ash had not conquered half the known galaxy by being predictable. The boarding party materialized inside the station's main hall. The queen's armor sensors detected movement behind a sealed door. With a gesture from her armored hand, her warriors took positions. "Breach it," she ordered. The door exploded inward. Her warriors rushed through, weapons ready. Instead of the chaos they expected, they found a single human man sitting calmly at a desk. He stood slowly, hands raised. "I am James Reed, diplomatic officer of the Earth Alliance," he said, his voice steady. "I stayed behind to attempt peaceful communication." Queen Ash stepped forward, towering over him. Most humans cowered before her height and the fierce appearance of her species. This one met her gaze. "Peaceful communication." She let out a sharp laugh. "Your kind spreads like a virus through our space, and you speak of peace." "If you would allow me to explain the situation, Your Majesty," James said, maintaining his composure. "There may be opportunities for mutual benefit that haven't been explored." The Queen circled him slowly. His heart rate was elevated, her sensors told her, but his external calm was remarkable. She had seen hardened warriors break under her gaze, yet this unarmed human spoke to her as if they were meeting at a diplomatic function. "Take him to my ship," she commanded. "I wish to study this unusual specimen." As her warriors moved to grab him, James straightened his uniform jacket. "I'll come voluntarily, Your Majesty, though I would appreciate if your soldiers could be gentle with the data tablets on my desk. They contain cultural exchange proposals that might interest you." Queen Ash felt a strange mix of amusement and irritation. Was he truly trying to negotiate terms of his own capture? The sheer audacity of it made her pause. "Bring the tablets," she ordered, surprising herself as much as her warriors. During the walk to the transport point, James attempted to engage her in conversation about Empire architecture, of all things. He commented on the elegant design of Empire ships, comparing them to ancient Earth sea vessels. "Silence," she finally commanded, but found herself adding, "Save your observations for later." Back on her flagship, as they led James to the high-security detention level, Queen Ash found her thoughts disturbing. She had expected to find satisfaction in capturing this human facility. Instead, she felt a nagging curiosity about her strange prisoner. In her private chamber, she read the initial assessment from ship sensors. Subject displays unusual neural patterns. Stress levels indicate awareness of danger, but behavior suggests trained diplomatic conditioning or possible psychological abnormality. Queen Ash removed her helmet, her silver hair falling free. She activated the cell surveillance feed, watching James calmly arranging the sparse prison furniture into what appeared to be a more efficient layout. "Have the prisoner brought to my interrogation chamber in 1 hour," she commanded. "And bring those data tablets," he insisted on keeping. She told herself she was simply gathering intelligence. It was important to understand how humans thought, to better crush them. Yet as she prepared for the interrogation, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to step into something far more complex than a simple military campaign. Little did Queen Ash know, this seemingly routine capture would be the first step in a journey that would change not only her life, but the fate of 2 civilizations. 3 days had passed since James Reed's capture, and Queen Ash found herself spending far too much time watching the surveillance feeds of his cell. Unlike other prisoners who paced, wept, or broke down, James kept to a strict routine. He exercised in the morning, meditated at midday, and spent his evenings writing in a small notebook her warriors had allowed him to keep. Play the latest interrogation recording. She commanded her ship's computer. The holographic display came to life, showing yesterday's session. Tell me about Earth's defenses, her recorded self demanded. I could, James replied calmly, but I'd rather tell you about Earth's hydroponics technologies. Your Empire's ships show signs of resource strain. We could help with that. Queen Ash paused the recording, rubbing her temples. Every session went this way. She would demand military information, and he would somehow steer the conversation toward cooperation and trade. Most annoying was how often she found herself genuinely interested in his proposals. A chime announced her commander's arrival. My queen, the prisoner's behavior continues to be unusual. Explain, she ordered, though she had a good idea what he meant. He's teaching the guard staff English. 3 of them are now taking regular lessons during their shifts. The commander shifted uncomfortably, and he's asking questions about our food shortages. Queen Ash stood abruptly. This had gone far enough. She would confront this human and end his subtle manipulation of her crew. When she entered his cell, James was drawing something in his notebook. He looked up and smiled. Your Majesty, I was just making notes about your ship's remarkable water recycling system. With a few adjustments, you could increase efficiency by 30%. Silence. She snapped. How did you learn about our systems? Simple observation, he replied. The vibration patterns in the walls, the humidity levels, the maintenance schedules I've overheard. It's not quite as efficient as Earth's systems, but it's fascinating how your people developed a completely different approach. Queen Ash found herself sitting down across from him before she realized what she was doing. Show me, she said, then quickly added, so I can know what secrets you've stolen. James turned his notebook toward her. His drawings were surprisingly accurate, but his suggested modifications were what caught her eye. They were elegant, simple, possible. Why are you doing this? She asked. You're a prisoner. Because suffering is unnecessary when cooperation is possible. He met her eyes. Your empire is struggling with resources. That's why you're expanding so aggressively. Earth went through similar challenges centuries ago. We learned some hard lessons that might help you. You think you can understand our struggles. But even as she said it, Queen Ash found herself studying his drawings more closely. I understand enough to see that your people are proud, capable, and facing challenges that no civilization should face alone. He smiled again, that irritatingly calm smile. Did you know that human and empire art have remarkable similarities? Your throne room's design follows almost exactly the same mathematical principles as ancient Earth temples. Queen Ash stiffened. How had he known about her private interest in art? She had hidden that weakness carefully, knowing her warriors would see it as soft. You are a strange prisoner, James Reed, she said finally. And you are a fascinating queen, he replied, one who cares more for her people than she shows. She should have punished him for such presumption. Instead, she found herself asking, tell me more about these hydroponic systems. As James explained Earth's farming technologies, Queen Ash realized she had come to end his influence, but was instead being drawn further into his web of ideas. Most disturbing of all, she wasn't entirely sure she wanted to resist. In the shadows of the cell, possibilities bloomed like the plants he described. And Queen Ash felt the first cracks forming in the armor around her heart. 2 weeks had passed, and James was no longer in a cell. Queen Ash had moved him to a guarded guest quarter, telling herself it was to better study human behavior. Right now, they sat in her private art gallery, a secret room few knew existed. This painting reminds me of Van Gogh, James said, studying the swirling purple and silver artwork. An Earth artist who also loved strong colors and bold strokes. Queen Ash moved closer to the painting. You won't gain favor by flattering my art collection. It's not flattery if it's true. James pointed to the brushstrokes. Your artists capture emotion just like ours. Art shows how similar our peoples really are. Before she could respond, her commander's voice came through the intercom. My queen, the War Council requests your presence. They have concerns about recent changes. Queen Ash straightened, her warrior mask falling back into place. Return the prisoner to his quarters, she ordered the guards outside. Thank you for sharing your art, James said as the guards approached. Perhaps next time I could tell you about Earth's music. She didn't answer, but found herself thinking about the offer as she walked to the council chamber. Inside, her 5 top commanders waited. Their faces showed worry and disapproval. My queen, the first commander started. The crew speaks of strange changes. Guards learning human language. Engineers studying human farming methods. Some even whisper that you spend hours talking with the prisoner about art. Queen Ash's silver eyes narrowed. You question my methods. We question the human's influence, another commander said. Our warriors grow soft. 3 raids have been delayed because crews are busy with these cultural projects. The raids were delayed, Queen Ash replied coldly, because I am studying more efficient ways to expand our empire. By learning about human music and paintings, a third commander scoffed. The queen we followed would never waste time on such weakness. Queen Ash slammed her hand on the table. The commanders jumped. The queen you followed brought you victory through intelligence and strategy. Do not presume to tell me how to rule. But after she dismissed them, their words echoed in her mind. Was she growing weak? She walked to the observation deck, staring out at the stars. A guard approached cautiously. My queen, the prisoner. He showed us how to grow fresh vegetables in the ship's empty cargo bay. Would you like to see? Queen Ash almost refused, but curiosity won. In the cargo bay, she found dozens of crew members tending to green plants growing in vertical tubes. The air smelled fresh and alive. It's a small start, James said, appearing beside her. But these will provide fresh food for your crew within weeks. Happy warriors fight better, after all. She turned to him. Is that what this is? A strategy to weaken us through kindness? No, he said simply. It's a way to show you there's more than one kind of strength. Looking at the growing plants, the eager faces of her crew, Queen Ash felt something shift inside her. She had conquered worlds, but she had never seen her people look so hopeful. Tell me about Earth's music, she said quietly. James smiled. I thought you'd never ask. That evening, as Earth classical music played softly in her quarters, Queen Ash realized something had changed. Her empire had always taken what it needed by force, but now, watching her people learn and grow in new ways, she wondered if there might be better paths to greatness. She only hoped her commander's growing discontent wouldn't force her to choose between these new possibilities and her throne. James couldn't sleep. The night cycle on the ship was quiet, but he had noticed unusual movements in the corridors. Guards he didn't recognize had replaced the usual ones. Something felt wrong. He pressed his ear against the wall connecting to the next room, using a trick he learned from one of the friendly guards. The Empire's ships conducted sound in strange ways, and if you knew the right spots, you could hear conversations from connecting chambers. The Queen has lost her way, a deep voice said. Tomorrow, during the fleet inspection, we make our move. The loyal crews have been replaced, another voice added. When the signal comes, we take control. The Queen's guest will be eliminated first. James pulled back from the wall, his heart racing, but his diplomatic training kept him calm as he thought through his options. Warning Queen Ash wouldn't be easy. He was sure the conspirators were watching him. He looked at the small garden he'd been allowed to keep in his room. Next to it sat the communication pad the Queen had given him to share Earth's agricultural data. She had trusted him with limited access to the ship's internal network. Smiling, he began typing what looked like farming notes. In her private chambers, Queen Ash was reviewing ship reports when a strange alert appeared on her screen. It was from the agricultural database, but instead of crop data, it contained a single line. The garden withers when its keeper is removed. Tomorrow's inspection brings frost. Her silver eyes narrowed. James had been teaching her earth metaphors. This was clearly a warning. But about what? She accessed the ship's security feeds quietly, using her private command codes. What she saw made her blood run cold. Her loyal guards had been replaced. Armed warriors she didn't recognize were positioned at key points throughout the ship. A soft knock at her door made her reach for her weapon. But it was only her old teacher, Bear, one of the few commanders who had known her since childhood. "My queen," he whispered. "I had to warn you." The others. "I know," she said. "How many support them?" "Half the fleet's commanders. They say you've grown weak, that the human has poisoned your mind with soft ideas." Bear looked sad. "They plan to act during tomorrow's inspection." Queen Ash stood, her mind racing. She had survived 100 battles, but this was different. These were her own people, turned against her because she dared to consider new ways. "Find a way to get James to my secure command room," she ordered Bear, without being seen. An hour later, James was brought in through a hidden passage. "I see you got my message," he said. "You took a great risk warning me," she replied. "They plan to kill you first." "Actually," James smiled, "that's exactly what we need them to try." Queen Ash tilted her head. "Explain." "Your people respect strength above all." "Yes, so let's give them a show of strength, but not the kind they expect." He laid out his plan. As she listened, Queen Ash felt a strange mix of emotions. This human, who should have been her enemy, was risking his life to help her. His plan was clever, using the conspirators' own expectations against them. "It's dangerous," she said finally. "If it fails, we both die." "Then we better not fail." James met her eyes. "Do you trust me?" The question hung in the air between them. A month ago, she would have laughed at the idea of trusting a human. Now, "Yes," she said simply. "I trust you." As they began preparing for tomorrow's confrontation, Queen Ash realized something important had changed. She wasn't just fighting to keep her throne anymore. She was fighting for the chance to build something new, something that could only exist if humans and her people worked together. And somehow, the human standing beside her, calmly plotting to save them both, had become essential to that future. The morning of the fleet inspection arrived with an unusual quiet on the ship. Queen Ash stood in her ceremonial armor, its black surface gleaming under the lights. James was in his quarters, supposedly unaware of the coming danger. "They're in position, my queen," Bear whispered, approaching her throne. "All the rebel commanders are here for the inspection." Queen Ash nodded slightly. Everything was ready. James's plan was simple but clever. Use the rebels' own plot against them. The great doors opened, and the rebel commanders entered. She could see the weapons hidden under their formal capes, the way they positioned themselves around the room. "My queen," the lead rebel commander spoke, "we are ready for the fleet inspection." "Actually," Queen Ash stood, her voice ringing through the chamber, "I believe you're ready for something else entirely." The rebels stiffened. Their leader's hand moved toward his weapon. "Bring in the prisoner," Queen Ash commanded. 2 guards dragged in James, who appeared to be struggling. Right on cue, he broke free and grabbed what looked like a weapon from his guard. The rebels reacted exactly as expected, all drawing their weapons to shoot him. That was their mistake. The moment they drew weapons in the throne room, a capital offense, hidden panels in the walls opened. Queen Ash's loyal troops emerged, weapons ready. The rebel commanders found themselves surrounded. "Drop your weapons," Queen Ash ordered coldly. "You choose this human over your own people," the rebel leader snarled. James stepped forward, the fake weapon falling from his hand. "She chooses progress over stagnation, growth over decay. Silence, human." Another rebel raised his gun. But before he could fire, something unexpected happened. The doors burst open, and dozens of crew members poured in, engineers, farmers, and guards who had been learning from James. "We stand with the Queen," they shouted. "We stand for the new way." The rebel commanders looked around in shock. They were surrounded not just by warriors, but by their own crew members who had tasted a better future and wouldn't go back. "You see," Queen Ash said, walking down from her throne, "while you plotted in shadows, James and I built something stronger than fear. We built hope." The rebels' weapons clattered to the floor, one by one. "Take them to the break," she ordered. Then, looking at the crew members who had come to support her, she added, "And expand the ship's garden. We'll need more food for all our people." The crowd cheered. As the rebels were led away, James approached the throne. "Your timing was perfect," Queen Ash said quietly. "I had faith in your people," he replied. "Once they saw a better way was possible, they chose it themselves." Queen Ash looked at her throne room, now filled with excited crew members talking about new projects and possibilities. It was so different from the cold, formal space it had been just months ago. "We have much work to do," she said. "The whole empire must learn there's another path besides conquest." "We?" James asked, raising an eyebrow. Queen Ash turned to him, her silver eyes soft. "Yes, we. You are no longer a prisoner or a guest. Today, you proved yourself a true ally." She faced her people, raising her voice. "From this day forward, James Reed will serve as Earth's ambassador to the Empire. Together, we will build something new. An empire of creation rather than conquest." The cheers that filled the throne room were deafening. As Queen Ash watched her people celebrate, she realized that in saving her throne, she had also found a way to save her empire's soul. And the human standing beside her, smiling that irritatingly confident smile, would help her do it. 1 month after the failed rebellion, change swept through the empire like a wildfire. Queen Ash stood on the observation deck of her flagship, watching ships arrive from distant empire worlds. Each carried leaders curious about the rumors they'd heard. "The delegates from the outer colonies have arrived," James said, joining her at the window. His new ambassador's uniform, a blend of Earth and Empire styles, suited him well. "Are they angry?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Some are. Others are excited. Most are just confused about why their warrior queen now talks about peace and prosperity." He smiled. The garden helped convince the first group. The ship's garden had grown into something extraordinary. What started as a small vegetable patch now filled 3 cargo bays, feeding the entire crew with fresh food. The sight of it had shocked the first visiting leaders into silence. "My queen," Bear interrupted, entering the deck. "The trade minister from Earth has arrived early. And there's a situation in the meeting hall." They hurried to the hall, finding 2 Empire generals arguing loudly with a group of young officers. "We cannot abandon our warrior ways," one general shouted. "The Queen has lost her mind, letting humans tell us how to live." "Look around you," a young officer responded, pointing to displays showing new farming stations and trade routes. "We're stronger now than when we only knew how to fight." Queen Ash stepped forward, her presence silencing the room. "Why do you think I was called the Savage Queen?" she asked quietly. Everyone stared at her. "It wasn't because I enjoyed violence," she continued. "It was because I would do anything to make our empire strong. And now I see that the strongest path isn't through war, but through growth." "Pretty words," the general sneered. "But come with me," she cut him off. She led the entire group to the ship's training area. There, Empire warriors were learning both their traditional combat and new Earth martial arts, combining the styles into something more effective than either alone. Next, she showed them the new fusion reactor, built with combined Earth and Empire technology. It produced twice the power of their old systems. "This is strength," she declared, "not destroying our enemies, but becoming better than we were yesterday." The general looked less certain now. Many of the others were nodding. "We're not abandoning our warrior heritage," James added. "We're adding to it. Earth learned long ago that the strongest warriors are those who know both war and peace. Queen Ash watched her people's faces as understanding slowly dawned. This was the real revolution, not the failed rebel attack, but the gradual change in hearts and minds. Later, in her private art gallery, now officially open to all crew members, she found James studying a new painting. It showed Earth and Empire ships flying together among the stars. The Earth Trade Minister was impressed, he said. The Alliance Treaty should be ready within weeks. Good, she replied. Though I worry about the outer colonies, change comes slowly to distant worlds. It will come, James assured her. Look how far we've come in just a few months. From prisoner and captor to. He trailed off, and Queen Ash felt that strange warmth in her chest that appeared whenever they almost spoke about their growing closeness. To partners in revolution, she finished for him, though they both knew there was more to it than that. As they stood together looking at the painting, Queen Ash realized that the real revolution wasn't in the big changes. The treaties, the technology, the trade routes. It was in small moments like this, where old enemies learned to see each other as something more. The Empire was changing, and so was she. And for the first time in her life, change didn't feel like weakness. It felt like flying among the stars, free and strong and full of possibilities. 6 months had passed since James Reed was first captured. Today, the Great Hall of the Empire's central palace was filled with delegates from both Earth and Empire worlds. The once fearsome warrior decorations were now joined by art from both cultures, and the garden system James had started had spread to every Empire ship and colony. Queen Ash stood before her throne, wearing ceremonial armor that had been modified to include Earth diplomatic symbols. She looked out at the gathered crowd, humans and Empire citizens standing together, talking, sharing ideas. It felt like a dream. "Ready?" James asked, stepping up beside her. He kept his Earth uniform, but added Empire rank markers that Queen Ash had personally designed. "I've conquered 12 worlds," she replied. "How can speaking to a peaceful crowd make me nervous?" "Because this time you're not conquering, you're building." He smiled that smile that still made her heart beat faster. And building is always harder than destroying. She nodded and stepped forward. The hall fell silent. 6 months ago, I captured a human who refused to act like a proper prisoner, she began, drawing laughs from both humans and Empire citizens. He showed me that true strength isn't in how many worlds you can conquer, but in how many you can help grow. She gestured to the massive screens showing live feeds from across the Empire. New gardens flourished on desert planets. Earth scientists worked alongside Empire engineers. Children from both species played together in newly built parks. "Today, we sign not just a peace treaty, but a promise," she continued. "A promise that we are stronger together than apart. That wisdom can come from unexpected places. That change isn't weakness. It's the greatest strength of all." The Earth representatives stood, led by their council leader. "We offer not just peace," he said, "but partnership. Together, we will explore the stars not as conquerors, but as discoverers." Queen Ash raised her hand, and Bear stepped forward carrying 2 documents, one on Earth paper, one on Empire crystal. As she signed both, the hall erupted in cheers. But she wasn't finished. She turned to James, who looked surprised as she remained at the signing table. "Months ago, the human diplomat showed me a different path," she said, her voice carrying over the now silent crowd. "He proved that one person can change an empire, not through force, but through understanding. Not through conquest, but through," she paused, looking into his eyes, "through love." A murmur ran through the crowd. James stood very still. "The Empire needs more than just an ambassador from Earth," Queen Ash continued. "It needs a leader who understands both worlds, who can help us navigate this new path." She held out her hand. "It needs a king." The hall exploded into chaos, happy chaos, because over the months, everyone had seen what the Queen was only now admitting. They had watched their fearsome ruler learn to laugh, to create rather than destroy, to love. James took her hand, and words weren't needed. They had moved from enemies to allies to something much more, their story becoming a symbol of everything their two civilizations could achieve together. Later, during the celebration, Queen Ash found James in their favorite spot, the original garden where it all began. "You know," he said, tending to the plants that had started everything. "I never did tell you my original diplomatic mission." "Oh." She raised an eyebrow. "I was supposed to negotiate a small trade deal for Earth vegetables." He laughed. "I'd say we achieved a bit more than that." Queen Ash, the once savage ruler who had learned to build rather than destroy, looked at the human who had changed everything. "We achieved exactly what both our peoples needed," she said softly. "We grew something new." And as they stood together in the garden where their story began, the stars seemed to shine brighter on the newly united civilizations, promising a future neither of them could have imagined 6 months ago. The savage queen had indeed fallen to a human's charm, but in falling, she had helped both their peoples rise to greater heights than ever before.